Welcome to G Fun Facts Online. When we think of Pompeii, we picture a city frozen in time. The eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, a sudden, catastrophic event that entombed a population in ash. We see the haunting casts of bodies, the perfectly preserved homes, and we assume that everyone perished. For centuries, that was the story. A tale of total annihilation. But that story is incomplete. Today, we're exploring the unseen chapter of Pompeii, the incredible story of the thousands who survived. This isn't just a tale of destruction. It's a story of escape, resilience, and the remarkable continuation of life against all odds. Let's uncover the enduring legacy of the survivors of Vesuvius. The popular image of Pompeii's entire population being instantly wiped out is a dramatic, but ultimately false, oversimplification. The eruption, while terrifying, was not an instantaneous event. It unfolded over a period of more than 18 hours, giving a crucial window of opportunity for escape. The first phase was a terrifying column of ash and pumice shooting miles into the sky. It was a horrifying spectacle, but it wasn't immediately lethal for everyone on the ground. For many residents, this was the signal to run. And the archaeology tells us they did. When excavators explored the city, they found evidence not just of death, but of a mass exodus. Stables were found empty of their horses and carts. Strong boxes, the ancient Roman equivalent of a personal safe, were discovered pried open and cleared of their valuables. These are not the signs of a population caught completely unaware. They are the signs of people who had time to gather what mattered most: their money, their means of transport, and flee. The numbers also support this. While the remains of approximately 1,500 individuals have been found at Pompeii and Herculaneum, the estimated combined population of these cities was over 20,000. This means that the vast majority, perhaps as many as 80 to 90% of the inhabitants, likely survived the initial stages of the eruption and made it out. We even have a first-hand account of the chaos. Pliny the Younger, watching from the town of Misenum across the Bay of Naples, wrote vivid letters describing the escape. He wrote of a sky turning black as night at midday, of ash and pumice raining down, and of the desperate cries of people searching for their families in the darkness. His own uncle, Pliny the Elder, a commander of the Roman fleet, launched a rescue mission, sailing his ships directly towards the disaster zone to try and save those trapped along the coast. This itself is proof that news of the eruption was spreading and organized attempts were being made to help. So if tens of thousands of people escaped, where did they go? The survivors of Vesuvius didn't scatter to the far corners of the Roman Empire. Most stayed relatively close, seeking refuge in the coastal communities of southern Italy, where they often had existing social, family, or business connections. Groundbreaking research by Professor Stephen Tuck of Miami University has been instrumental in tracing their footsteps. By meticulously cross-referencing family names that were unique to Pompeii and Herculaneum, with public records and inscriptions found in surrounding cities after 79 AD, he has been able to identify over 200 individual survivors and map their resettlement. His work shows that these refugees tended to settle in clusters, relying on their old networks to build new lives. Several key destinations emerged. One was the ancient city of Cumae. The Sulpicius family, for example, had a banking business in Pompeii. Their strongbox, containing detailed financial records of loans and debts, was found abandoned on a road outside Pompeii. It was likely too heavy to carry in their flight. We know they resettled in Cumae, probably because their business records showed they already had extensive financial ties there. Naples, or Neapolis as it was known, was a major, bustling city that absorbed a large number of refugees. Inscriptions bearing distinctly Pompeian family names have been found throughout Naples. One fascinating case is that of a man named Cornelius Fuscus. An inscription found all the way in modern-day Romania, where he later died during a military campaign, states that he was originally from the colony of Pompeii, then lived in Naples, before joining the army. Another piece of evidence is a family tomb in Naples inscribed with the word have, which is a greeting in the Oscan dialect spoken in Pompeii, a clear linguistic link to the displaced population. Puteoli, another major port city, was a logical destination. It's here that the family of Aulus Umbricius, who were famous merchants of a fermented fish sauce called garum, re-established their thriving business. In a touching tribute to their new life, Aulus named his first child born after the eruption Puteolanus, after the city that gave them refuge. The port of Rome itself, Ostia, also became a new home for survivors. The Caltilius family not only resettled in Ostia, but became incredibly successful. They founded a temple to the Egyptian god Serapis, showing their integration into the religious and economic life of the city. They even intermarried with another survivor family, the Munaciuses, creating a new, wealthy, and influential extended family built from the ashes of their old lives. This influx of thousands of refugees into these cities is also visible in the public works projects. Archaeologists have noted a surge in new construction, aqueducts, public buildings in these areas right after 79 AD, likely funded to accommodate the sudden and dramatic increase in population. This wasn't just a haphazard migration, it was a demographic shift that required an organized response, and that response came from the very top. The Roman government, under the newly crowned Emperor Titus, acted swiftly. Titus had only been emperor for a few months when Vesuvius erupted, and the disaster became a major test of his leadership. By all accounts, he passed with flying colors. Historians like Cassius Dio and Suetonius detail his decisive and compassionate actions. Titus immediately appointed 2 former consuls, high-ranking senators, to oversee the relief and reconstruction efforts in the region of Campania. He allocated massive amounts of money for aid, drawing not only from the state treasury, but also from his own personal fortune. One of his most pragmatic decisions was to reallocate the property of those who died in the eruption without leaving any heirs. Normally, this wealth would go to the state. Instead, Titus redirected it directly to the survivor communities to help fund their recovery. He also canceled taxes for the affected cities for 5 years. This wasn't just charity, it was smart crisis management. The funds were used to build the infrastructure needed to support the refugee populations, helping cities like Naples and Puteoli cope with the strain and allowing the region to restore a sense of normalcy. There is no evidence that survivors were put into camps or faced discrimination. It appears they were welcomed and integrated, with many going on to start new businesses and even hold positions in local government. But life after the dust settled was not easy for everyone. The stories of individual survivors reveal both incredible resilience and profound hardship. While some families, like the garum-producing Umbrici Scauri or the temple-building Caltiliuses, managed to rebuild their fortunes and thrive, others faced a much more difficult path. Consider the story of Fabia Secundina. She was likely the granddaughter of a wealthy wine merchant in Pompeii, but she ended up in Puteoli, where she married a gladiator who died young, leaving her in a financially precarious position. Her story is a reminder that escaping the volcano was only the first struggle. Yet, even among those with little, there was generosity. The Masuri family, for example, took in a foster son named Avianius Felicio. This was highly unusual in Roman society, where orphans were typically cared for by their extended family. The fact that he was fostered suggests he had lost every single one of his relatives in the eruption. Another family, the Vibidias, had been wealthy patrons in Herculaneum. After resettling in Beneventum, a female member of the family continued their tradition of public giving. She dedicated a small, humble altar to the goddess Venus on public land, a poignant and personal continuation of her family's legacy, even in their reduced circumstances. These individual stories, pieced together from fragments of stone and records, give a deeply human dimension to the aftermath. They show us the everyday struggles and triumphs of people trying to rebuild a world that had been violently shattered. For centuries, it was believed that after the initial rescue and salvage operations, Pompeii was completely abandoned, a ghost city left to be forgotten until its famous rediscovery in the 16th century. But recent archaeology has revealed a stunning postscript to Pompeii's story. Some people came back. New excavations in the southern quarter of Pompeii have confirmed that a makeshift settlement existed within the city's ruined walls for centuries after the eruption, persisting until at least the 5th century AD. These were not the wealthy citizens who had fled to new lives in Naples or Ostia. These were the poor, the destitute, and perhaps scavengers who came to live and work amidst the ruins. Gabriel Zuchtriegel, the director of the Pompeii Archaeological Park, describes this post-eruption settlement as a precarious and gray agglomeration, a kind of camp, a favela among the still recognizable ruins of the Pompeii that once was. These settlers lived a hard life. The evidence shows they re-inhabited the upper stories of damaged houses that still protruded above the layers of ash and pumice. They converted the buried ground floors into cellars, installing ovens, hearths, and mills. They dug tunnels through the volcanic debris, not just to create living spaces, but also to salvage valuable materials left behind: marble from public buildings, tools, jewelry, anything they could find and reuse or sell. This incredible chapter of Pompeii's history was almost lost forever. For many years, archaeologists focused on unearthing the spectacular frescoes and artifacts of 79 AD, often overlooked or even removed the evidence of this later, much less glamorous, period of occupation. They saw it as contamination of the pristine time capsule, but with new, more meticulous excavation techniques. This forgotten story of survival and tenacity is finally being brought into the light. This informal settlement eventually met its own end. Another, later eruption of Vesuvius in 472 AD likely drove out the last inhabitants, finally sealing Pompeii's fate until the modern era. So the story of Vesuvius is far more complex and hopeful than we ever imagined. It transforms Pompeii and Herculaneum from simple cities of the dead into powerful symbols of resilience. The archaeological evidence, from family names appearing in distant cities, to the Roman state's organized relief effort, to the faint traces of a shantytown built in the ruins, has given a voice to the thousands who escaped. Their journey tells us about the strength of community and social networks, and the incredible human will to survive, rebuild, and even return in the face of unimaginable disaster. The legacy of the survivors is not written in ash and pumice. It's found in the businesses they rebuilt, the families they started, and the enduring spirit of a people who refused to be defined by the mountain that destroyed their world. Life, in all its complexity, found a way to continue.